Dear guests, welcome our session, LivenArch VII, 2023. We have three presentations at this session. Generally, if there is any questions, they write on the comments line. As far as I see, there is no question yet, but I would rather to get questions at the end of three presentations. I hope this will work for us. Well, so we are on the second day of our LivenArch VIII 2023 second parallel session. Second presentation is coming from Bursa Uludağ University, Sebla ARIN ENSARIOGLU. She is here. Her title of her presentation is Urban Destruction, Degeneration with the Intention of Regeneration. Sebla, floor is yours. You can start your presentation.
Hello, my name is Sebla ARIN, and the topic of my presentation is urban destruction, degeneration with the intention of regeneration. Reviving a historical building in its original form, purifying it from unnecessary attachments, and preserving it in its original status is a frequently encountered method of conservation. Similarly, when it comes to the urban texture, it's a common approach that some of the buildings in the same built environment are demolished, whereas the rest are taken into conservation. This conservation attitude generally covers the buildings belonging to a selected historical period. However, this selective approach raises many questions. The city is an organic structure that stratifies, evolves, transforms, and grows over time. So to what extent the cleaning operation, which leaves only one of the urban layers behind, preserves the characteristic qualities of the city? The urban phenomenon is too complex to be explained with a singular situation, and it occurs when all of these layers come together to form a holistic image. Therefore, revealing the original quality of multi-layer cities, which can be called as a palimpsest, is possible with an urban design that allows the old and relatively new layers to be perceived together. Urban destruction is sometimes carried out to make room for the new and sometimes in order to purify the old from relatively new additions. In this context, we can collect the motifs for the destruction under four main headings: conservation, reconstruction, urban transformation or rehabilitation, and gentrification. I will continue my presentation by giving information about some examples of each motif. In terms of this presentation, I will talk about only one example for each motif, but in the full text you may find more cases. The demolition carried out around Bursa Hans area can be discussed as an example of destruction with the motive of conservation. In the context of this project, many registered and unregistered buildings in the region were demolished in order to reveal the historical texture of the Hans area. The most controversial among demolished buildings is the Bursa Central Bank building, a registered structure designed by Şevki Vanlı and Ersan Gömleksizoğlu, built in 1967. The preference of demolishing and reconstructing the building instead of strengthening it and preserving it in situ was criticized by the Chamber of Architects, NGOs, and academics, but the annulment of the decision couldn't be achieved. Despite the board's decision to reconstruct, such an attempt hasn't been made yet. At this point, in the palimpsest cities like Bursa, which have grown over time in a multi-layered way, it's a problematic approach that the preservation of the urban texture is carried out with a conservation approach that prioritizes only a certain period, shows the destruction of a building, which is a living document of modern architecture, also damages the multi-layered urban memory. The other motif is reconstruction, and Emek Movie Theater is an example. Emek Movie Theater was a part of the building block which used to contain Circle Orient, Gaten Palace, ERPEK and Rüya Movie Theaters, and Melek Apartments. Depending on this fact, Emek Movie Theater can be accepted as a part of a holistic structure which was the symbol of the Westernization movement of the Ottoman Empire, not only the early Republican period. The movie theater, which was used until 2013, was demolished for the construction of the Grand Para shopping center, which was to be built on the same parcel on that day. Afterwards, it was rebuilt on the 7th floor of the shopping center by using some structural elements from the demolition, breaking away from the context it established with the city. At this point, the questions arise whether reconstruction is a real conservation method, whether it can bring back the lost urban memory, and whether registration is sufficient to protect the architectural heritage buildings against destruction. Another motif is transformation and rehabilitation. The Levent building in Ankara, designed by Seyfi Arkan, one of the important representatives of the Republican era architecture, was registered as a removable cultural property in 1980. Following the start of Helgeland Square Regeneration and Melikgaard Mosque project in 2013, it was demolished in 2017 with the decision of the Conservation Board on the condition that it will be reconstructed in another locations, citing the structural instability. 2 years after the demolition, which drew the reaction of the public, the court cancelled its decision on the grounds that it didn't comply with the principles of urban conservation, the protection of cultural assets that are works of art, the relevant legislation, and the law. The court's decision also emphasized that the right of future generation to see a cultural heritage building with its original features was not protected. In all of the cases mentioned in the full text as the examples of construction with the motive of rehabilitation, structural weakness due to building age was asserted as a legal foundation for demolition. At this point, it's necessary to discuss whether structural strengthening can be a solution and whether it's possible to refunction the existing buildings by protecting the traces of urban memory. Another motif is gentrification, and Sulukule Quarter is an example. Sulukule, known as the oldest Romani settlement in the world, was formed in the 11th century by the placement of Romani people from India in this region. After 1918, the neighborhood gradually started to take its current form before the demolition. The demolition process, which started in 2005 within the scope of Sulukule Renovation Project, was completed in 2009. Then, the construction of Ottoman residences started within the scope of the project. Following the start of demolition, Toki houses 41 kilometers away from the existing neighborhood were offered to the inhabitants as an alternative shelter. The common feature of all examples examined in the full text is that the people who lived in the region before the demolition were largely deprived of their rights and forced to live in a very remote part of the city, disrupting the continuity of their living habits. So as a conclusion, in the cases of urban destruction carried out with different motifs discussed within the scope of this study, the urban texture has been cleaned from the buildings belonging to various architectural periods and approaches and turned into an exhibition space of a singular understanding or style. Another determination of this study is that most of the buildings preferred to be demolished in these cases are examples of modern architectural heritage. The rest of the mentioned destructed cases in this study are the places of otherized communities. In most of urban renewal and gentrification projects, there is a remarkable search for identity. Independently of urban memory, this identity is shaped according to the vision of central decision-making mechanisms. However, the main conclusion of this paper is that urban memory should have continuity. The city is not a crystal clear phenomenon. Therefore, the coexistence of urban layers is really important, and that the sacrification of one or more urban and architectural layers for the sake of others is not a legitimate action. I can finish my words with this last sentence. Urban regeneration shouldn't be done at the cost of degeneration of urban identity. Thank you for listening.
Hello.
Well, thank you so much, Ensarioğlu. So, unfortunately, I cannot say anything about these demolitions, and it really hurt us that İlbank headquarter demolition Still, I cannot accept it. Our third presentation is coming from New Zealand, Wellington, New Zealand. Three fellows, Joseph Aldridge, Hallie Hooper, Andrew Brown. Who is here? I don't know. Who will give the presentation? Gürkan, Güray.
It's
Are they?
me.
Oh, Joseph, welcome.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't see on my screen. Okay, your title of your presentation is Enabling and Promoting Engagement in Regenerative Urban Design. Floor is yours. You can start your presentation.
Hello, my name is Joseph Aldridge, and today I will be discussing the work I've done developing a tool to enable genuine community engagement during regenerative projects at an urban design scale. I completed this paper alongside Professor Andre Brown of Wellington University and senior urban designer Hallie Hooper. The implementation of regenerative theory into our built environment is critical for anyone who at least wants to try to achieve an optimistic vision for the future. Effective community engagement is a fundamentally important aspect of regenerative design theory. Now, I put emphasis on effectiveness because, as I see it today, the tools used to engage with communities do not lead to effective outcomes in group settings. Why is this? Well, there are a few that enable diverse groups of people to express their values, goals, and needs. It is more common for said tools to stay in forms that are helpful primarily to designers. Forms such as plans, sections, and diagrams. Consequently, those without professional training may find these difficult to access and fully comprehend, restricting the effectiveness of how they can engage with the project. I came to this understanding through research, but more importantly, by talking to those around me. I can't count how many times friends or family members have discussed design proposals whilst completely misinterpreting the proposed outcomes or the positive implications that they put forward. In New Zealand at least, there is a clear divide between professionals and the public. It became clear a new engagement tool could have a genuinely positive impact and aid in closing this divide. What I designed was a set of cards to be used in workshop settings with community groups as an alternative to the contemporary forms of engagement. The cards are domain-specific to the regenerative design field. They summarize good design practices and provide information on regenerative design and general design methods. The elements of informality and playfulness encoded into the design of the cards encourages participative interaction, in contrast to typical consultative engagement sessions. What we call tactic cards make up the majority of the deck. There are 40 of these tactic cards that communicate regenerative design methods that may be implemented in a project. The content of the cards is a reflection of current regenerative theory and practice research. Overall, these cards cover numerous interconnected themes. The cards work to not only describe individual design moves, but also the systems underlining a regenerative approach. In this way, they communicate the holistic approach regenerative design takes. Sorting and interacting with the cards helps workshop members understand and establish their community's priorities, in part due to the broadness of the connections they can make. For me personally, the interaction between cards relating to urban resilience and food production are the most interesting. Currently in New Zealand we face major environmental issues. The flooding in the North Island that affected Auckland earlier this year, as well as the flooding last week in Queenstown, are clear examples of this. Questions are being asked about the viability of living in certain areas of the country, whilst the urban centres are proving to be exceptionally vulnerable to flooding, causing food supplies to be cut. This has caused new regenerative developments in New Zealand, and the tactic cards have the potential to be used to create a collective understanding amongst the public of how these developments, such as the implementation of rain gardens on streetscapes and the restoration of wet ecosystems, can work in system and reduce the risks imposed by a continuously worsening climate. Here are a few sample sets of some suggested systems at play. As you can see, there's a clear connection between the tactic cards, and you can see quickly how one will affect the other and work together. Defining the content and the design of the cards was a tricky task. Accessibility was the key driver to all of these design decisions. The text acts to describe the tactics. They're concise and aim to replace complex terminology in industry with an understandable vocabulary. The aim is to ensure the cards are not too prescriptive, which could limit the conversations in the community groups, and close off the potential linked networks they might generate. Instead, the content suggests connections and links through the related tactics, the 4 pillars section, and the principal cards. Overall, this mixture of graphic information, description, and theory can enable users to create a value judgment based on a collective understanding that they've formed. Due to the limitations of this project, we were unable to progress with comprehensive user testing, although 2 stages of initial reviews and feedback have been used to refine the system. The next stage will be user testing with community groups. The 2 stages are with us and with the group holding the cards in these photos. There has been feedback and refinement on the basis of reviewing the appropriateness of the content. To conclude, I strongly believe redefining the way we engage with communities by using tools that encourage play, broad discussions, and those that create a common language in workshop settings can and will lead to better outcomes. This is of the utmost importance as regenerative projects require a major shift away from the status quo, and we need public opinion on our side as designers to proceed with such vital developments. Thank you for listening.
Well, thank you, Joseph, for your presentation. It was interesting, tactic cards. Is there any comment from our viewers? I am looking at written question and answers. There is no questions. Is there any comment from other panelists to rest of us? Would you like to comment?
He's also one of the New Zealand team.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay. So what time is in New Zealand now? Like 10 hours ahead of us, I believe. Joseph, huh?
9:35 p.m.
PM, okay. We are just at noon time at the moment here. Güray, is there any other questions?
No.
Okay. Well, I thank you, each of you, for participating from distance. I hope in the future Congress, it will be LivenArch 9, maybe 2 years from now. Thank you very much for all of you. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.